Hey everybody. That went live really fast after I pushed that button. Let me get myself squared away here. I am literally having a fireside chat. I thought this was kind of fun for this season to kind of be in front of the fireplace and be cozy this evening. Yeah, I thought it was a good time. So I have a bunch of questions that you have. Hey guys, there's already a couple comments. Like that makes me so excited. Um, so let me pull up what I was talking about. All right. So many questions that I already have. Can you speak to what the funeral home in Washington, D.C.? So, yes, I'm going to touch on 41's funeral here in just a few minutes. So, had some great question submissions. I have a big one coming for a girl named Anna. I'm so excited to answer her questions. So shout out to her. I hope it's Anna or Anna. Anna, I think is what it is, about how she can support her spouse at mortuary school. Quick on Victor Daniel. He says the pain's going around his body. He is getting worse from the cancer. I do get some people that ask me about him. So, hey, Robert Ryan. So, working on a lot of videos coming up. Show you guys my new little friend. It is made of resin. Don't worry, this is not real. But I think this might be the answer to the restoration video that everybody keeps requesting. So, I might be using this head to, I don't know, I might be destroying this head so that I can restore it for a video for you guys. So, we'll see what happens with that. So let me dive into some questions here, and let me pull up. I want to make sure I'm trying to answer questions as you guys come. Sometimes they come faster than I can answer them. So I did have a great, everybody asked about President Bush's, 41's funeral from this last week. And my daughter was having surgery that day. She had her tonsils out. So I had to kind of do the playbacks and watch a lot of it over the coming days. Yes, I'm almost to 20,000. I can't wait because I have a fun idea for a 20,000th video that I'm going to do, or celebrating hitting 20,000. But so everybody's asked about this funeral. So I watched a lot of it on replay and caught a little bit of it live. And I think the best word to talk about all of it is classy. Seriously, how classy was that funeral? I think between the train and the horse-drawn hearse, and just everything was really awesome. So the eulogy was spot on from his son. It was the perfect length of time. It was funny. It was moving. It was beautiful. Crap on anybody that said stuff about him crying at the end, because how many people were not crying along with him. So it was awesome. All the presidents were there, the honor guards, everything was just beautiful. There were some missteps with that flag not being pressed perfectly in that picture, with Sully laying in front of the casket and the wrinkly flag drove all of us funeral directors nuts, because it needed to be perfect that day, and why it wasn't, I don't know. And Sully, come on, how many of us were not in love with the dog after that? And that I read he's going on to Walter Reed and will become a therapy dog over at Walter Reed, which is a really cool thing. And then the casket was crooked on the bier. At one point, it was hanging off to one end, and it's why can't you get that? So when it comes to funerals for the presidents, they all go through one funeral home that's kind of contracted for these, and it is what I have learned is that is an SCI firm. So it's a corporate run firm, and there's a team, and they're the elite team that handles kind of all these big funerals for presidents and for a lot of these political type people. And so they're, contracted. So they're used to dealing with kind of all the agencies and all the hoops and the bureaucracy and everything. So I think just like any funeral home, they are going to make some mistakes. You know, it's huge and it's in the public eye, so everything you do is being scrutinized. So kudos to them for getting all of that together and taking care of everything. And, you know, we don't know how the body looked. We don't know how that part of it was because we don't get to see his physical body. You know, that was kind of a private thing. So that part we can't really comment on, but we can see all of the other part of it. But we don't know how much of that was the funeral home and how much of that was staff that they're made to work with through the government. So I think we can comment all we want, but we don't really know exactly how much of that was dictated to them by the higher powers. Yeah, Cheyenne, I agree with the wrinkled flag. It was bad. But what do you do? You know, it's my elf on the shelf. Well, he is actually, I have two of them at our house, one for each of the children. So they are in a chair right now, covered in little pom-pom thingies that, I don't know, they were naughty and got into. And so, LA for a meet and greet again. No time soon, but I'm sure I will again. How many of you want me to do meet and greets if I travel around? Like if I come to Chicago, should I do a meet and greet? If I come to wherever, should I do a meet and greet? Okay, Hallie is posting. I want to answer her question. My daughter died of acute liver failure. She was really bloated, and she was not like that after her death in the hospital. It's been bothering me. Hallie, if I'm pronouncing your name right, was she on IV medication and things and fluids at the hospital for a long period of time? See if you can answer that for me. Dallas, yeah, I've never been to Texas. It is definitely on our list. So Hallie, so because a lot of fluid is introduced into her system, she gets a lot of edema is what we see oftentimes at hospitals. And so the body, even though they might not appear bloated, a body can put on 50 or more pounds of water weight or fluid weight from all the IV fluid that they're pushing into a body. And that can present afterwards, and sometimes it makes the body bloat and swell in all sorts of different ways. Sometimes it's in the face, in the mouth, in the neck, and everywhere. But it's hard to tell in your situation. I'm so sorry about your daughter. Honestly, it's horrible to have a loss, but then also to have that bad last memory at the funeral home. I have no idea kind of what happened there, but that would be my guess as to why she was extra bloated is because of all of that fluid. My husband had a big dent in his head. They dropped him. I think that they dropped him. I am not sure. My husband was swelled up. Where was the dent in his head? Like under his hair, or it was a new dent? LHT consultants for me, they do high-profile funerals for government officials. I've never heard of the LHT consultants, so I'm going to have to look into that, Andrew, and get back to you on that. My son, one more thing here. My son was stillborn when his casket was at the cemetery. It looked like there was a twisted wire hanging outside of the casket. Ooh, depends what time of stillborn casket he was, or baby casket that he was in. I don't know what the wire was. It could have been something to, you know, twist and lock the lid to the base, or it might have just been something that was hanging out the backside that wasn't supposed to be. I don't know for sure. Who pays for my meet and greets? So I've only done, I think, officially one in LA, and we just met at a coffee house and, you know, had coffee. So it wasn't a big, huge, crazy. So usually, I don't know what I would usually do. I'll have to come up with a usual of what I do, but I would say if I go to Chicago probably the most of any city outside of here, and so I would say, hey, I'm coming to Chicago at this time at this place. Does anybody want to maybe meet and have a drink? So I'm having a drink right now, by the way. Is anybody else having a cocktail? It's, 9 o'clock at night, and just seems like a good thing that I thought I should have a beer. When I heard about the girls in Colorado, they found in crude oil and gas, they had skin slippage with that, and it was on top of this. Sean, I'm not quite sure. I would say my first thought is that maybe when he was on the cot, Maybe his head was pressed against the top bar of the cot for a little long. I wouldn't say it's hard to drop somebody on the top of their head. Honestly, if he was dropped, it would have probably been on his face or the back of his head, not the top of his head. So I would say maybe it was just pressed against something for too long and it just left a little bit of an indentation. So the girls in Colorado that were in the crude oil and gas, they had skin slippage. So skin slippage is when the top layer of your skin comes off, essentially. It separates from the rest and it comes off. And so that happens a lot in hot situations like that, where the body and the temperature heats up and decomposition is advanced, and so the skin just slips right off the top. Not all of it, but the top part slips off. So, woo, Carolyn, cheers, my friend. I'm going to answer a couple other questions. So I had P. Willie B. wrote me a couple months back, actually. I went through all my questions, so I need to, about Catholic cemeteries. How do Catholics consecrate a cemetery? And if a Catholic is buried in a national cemetery, is that still consecrated ground? So I went to the Catholic diocese around here and said, what is an answer for this? Because I have no idea. So they do a rite of blessing over a cemetery when they start a new cemetery. They put a cross in the middle of the cemetery, and that just kind of says this is consecrated ground. And so then they have a ceremony at the cross, and they read these specific prayers and blessings over it. And it's incensed, there's holy water, and they do a prayer or a liturgy of the Eucharist, and then it's a blessed cemetery. They asked, if you're buried in another cemetery, so the priest can bless a grave in any cemetery. There's a couple different texts that have been written for such a situation, so they just bless that grave space before the person's buried in it, and that makes it a blessed place. So that answer was a lot more simpler than I thought it would be. The strangest services you had to do. Ooh, Albert, I'm going to have to think about that and get back to you. Merry Christmas to you too, Big John. I'm going to probably post your video. So Big John had asked me to do a video on digging a grave at a cemetery. So I have it. It should be posting in the next few days. So that one's for Big John. LHT. Yeah, Andrew, I'm still going to have to look at that. So, Free family in England, that is the biggest funeral. Who do you work for, Elena? I'm going to be coming to England, hopefully in the spring. I was hoping to come this fall, or this winter, but I think it'll be spring to come work in the UK for a couple days at a funeral home. Hollis asked me, how do you run a funeral home and embalm and do funerals? Do you do it all or do you assign staff? So I think it depends on the size of your funeral home. If you do this, if it's a smaller funeral home, yes, you do it all. But you may only do 50, 60 calls a year. So if you break that down, maybe one a week, which is not how it ever happens. Usually it's like 2 weeks of nothing and then like 6 calls in 1 week. But yeah, you just do it yourself. You branch out, or you kind of lay out your workload and you handle it all yourself. And you do have staff. You delegate some, but you do it yourself if it's in a smaller. If you're in a larger funeral home, you have the people that run the funeral home. You have your arrangers, you have your embalmers and your body prep people, and you have your removal staff, and it is compartmentalized, as I like to say. So you have all these different places that people work in, and they're kind of specialized. And sometimes they go to the other areas, but usually you just stick in your kind of bubble that you are good at doing. And so it works out well. Do you enjoy walking around cemeteries? Yes, cemeteries are so beautiful. Looking at the old headstones, I was just at a really old, small, cute as can be country cemetery 2 days ago. Was that 2 days ago? I don't even know what day of the week it is. It was on Monday. I was there, and it was so cute. And I met a lady that day at the funeral who was 101, and she was going to be buried in this cemetery. And it's just a small couple families had this little cemetery. I love it. And all the old headstones, it's just, you can't you can't get cuter, I think, than some of those old ones. We will get to dressing bodies. That's going to be an upcoming video. Have I ever been traumatized by what I've seen? There's definitely things I wish I could unsee, but it's usually not things that you would think. Broken bones bother me. They just, if I see a leg and the leg is bent in funny angles or the arm is not where it should be, it bothers me a lot. Or some of these cancers that people get that eat out their neck or other parts of their body, and it's like just rotted skin and bed sores, things like that are just, they're gross, and I feel bad for the person because they had to have hurt while they were alive and they smell horrible. Some of that I just wish I could unsee. I did care for a little girl once, and she had some mental problems, and she was young, but her head was shaved. She had done it to herself, and her body literally looked like it had been drugged through razor blades multiple times. That's how many cuts she had all over her body that had healed and then been done again, and healed and been done again. I want to say she was only 8 or 9 years old. She just had a very hard, very rough life, and her little body was so, it was just, I don't, things like that where that those situations exist and people live in those states, and with that pain, it's, you wish you could imagine those feelings. Not so much the visual, it's the mental and what you think came along with it mentally that you wish you could unsee, I guess. Ever lose your appetite after an embalming? No. I hate to say no. How do you deal with contractures? With fractures? Silent fades. I don't know what you're asking. How do you, if the person had bed sores, do you tell the family? No, because they usually know if they had bed sores, because typically there's like a pad over it, and there's like a bandage there, so you just remove the bandage and treat the bed sore. Reset bones? No, usually we just kind of deal with them. We don't reset them. There's no point in resetting them. Why is formaldehyde used? Because it is the chemical that does the best at preservation. What is done with the fluids it replaces? They go down the drain. No worries. 1967 Rhonda. There are definitely videos on where fluid goes, but formaldehyde is just the fluid that, or the chemical that has done the best. Glutaraldehydes and some other things have come along. They've tried some formaldehyde-free fluids, and they don't work very well. Is there a set speed for a funeral procession? No. Sometimes you go full speed on the highway in a procession. It just depends where you're going and how long you have to go for. Most don't ask, like hair clipping. Anything you ever offer the family, most don't ask, like hair clipping. Anyone ever ask for anything off the norm? There's some funeral homes that do ask every single family for, do you want your loved one fingerprinted, or do you want a hair clipping, or, do things like that. But it might be too much to ask every single family, but it's nice to ask rather than have them come back and say, why didn't you ask me? I did have to cut all the hair off of one girl once, and I really hated doing it, but her mom wanted to keep all of her hair, and I did not like that I wasn't scalping her, but it felt like I was just, dehumanized. I don't even know. I just felt like I was doing something bad to her by taking off all of her hair to bury her, and I don't know why. Just it didn't set well with me, but that's what the mother wanted, so I did cut off all her hair. So why is the inside of the casket colored after 15 years? Look at digging up graves, nasty. It's because of the fluids from the body. When the body decomposes, it discolors the interior of the casket. How do you deal with multiple funerals for one family? My grandparents passed away 18 days apart. It was hectic. If they happen within a certain time period, you can do them at the same time. I have done funerals for several couples who died together, and it's always crazy to lose. Typically as a child, when you lose one parent, you have that other parent for the first loss. So you kind of baby step into it. But when you lose both parents at the same time, you're all of a sudden thrown to the top of the pyramid. And it kind of blows their minds. And to have a funeral for two people at once, there's a lot of logistics, and you've got a couple different sides of the families, and it's very heavy to do. And I've gotten very close to those families quickly out of necessity. I'm sorry if I'm missing some of your questions, and I will go back and answer them via written as they're going. But my mom's ashes are in a little plastic box and not in the urn, but I do not want to play with them to get them in the urn. What should I do? You can go back to where you had your mom cremated and ask them to put her in your urn if they will do that. There are some funeral homes that will not place the cremated remains into an urn that you didn't purchase with them. And that's just because they don't know and don't want to hurt your container that you purchased somewhere else. Because say you bring in great-great-great-grandma's heirloom and ask them to place the cremated remains in them and they hurt that, that's a huge liability. So unless they have purchased it, they don't want to make the risk of hurting it. So that does happen. Angel Christina had asked me, can you please do a video on your opinion of the funeral homes that have been caught stashing bodies, especially children and addicts, due to lack of ability of parents to pay? What do you do if someone doesn't have the money to embalm, view, bury, or cremate their loved one? So this just happened in Michigan. I'm sure you heard some of this, where two funeral homes within like 2 weeks' time were busted for finding some children or babies stashed up in the I'm at lack for words today, the ceiling, like above the tiles and stuff in the ceiling and in other places in the funeral home. And a lot of that is the whole story is not being told and is not coming through in the media. And I haven't heard through the investigation yet what the rest of this whole story is, because we don't know. There's, they say they found cremated remains that are there. Well, every funeral home has cremated remains. I'll say probably 98% of funeral homes have cremated the remains that nobody has picked up, because unbeknownst to them, family just doesn't come back to get them. So it's not radical to find cremated remains at funeral homes that are old, that are 50, 60, 70 years old. So that's not crazy. But finding babies in the ceiling tiles, I have no idea. Why are they there? Was it a situation where they were providing a free service to families to cremate a baby, and the crematory started charging, and so they didn't want to pay, and because there was no income, or they were taking money from families but not having the baby cremated and stashing the body? It's hard to know without the rest of the story in that situation. It's way too easy to say the funeral home is horrible and to jump down the throat of the funeral home when I don't know the whole story. So I hate to condemn and say negative things about a funeral home when I don't know the whole situation. Yes, no funeral home should ever have old babies in the funeral home. So yes, damn them for doing that. But I don't know why. I don't know any of the situation. So it's hard to comment on any of it when you don't know the whole story. Sphinx, when you do a funeral, what are the stranger guys they asked you? Man, some of these strangest things or weirdest things, it's hard to recall right now. Off the cuff, some of those. So I'm going to have to think about those. How often do you go live? I think I've only done 5 or 6 lives. I should do them more. Yes? I don't know. They're kind of fun to do. I feel rapid fire, like I'm missing so much, and I have to like look because I have my laptop set up to read the comments. I love it because you guys throw such good questions at me, but I have missed so many of them. How long do funeral homes have to keep the cremated remains? So this is a great question. It depends on the state laws and the contracts that they sign. So some crematories and funeral homes, the contract that they sign says that after 30 days, if the loved one is not picked up, then the funeral home may dispose of them. No, that does not mean throwing them in the trash, but that means maybe burying them at a common grave space or interring them at, some cemeteries will have a niche space that, maybe a funeral home buys a niche space that they can put a whole bunch of cremated remains in, and once a year they go put all the bodies that are the cremated remains that nobody picked up. But like in Michigan, I think, and don't quote me, it's like if somebody doesn't pick up a loved one, I can send the letter to the family or to everybody in the family that I can contact, and that states you have 30 days to pick up your loved one or they will be disposed of and in a common grave space. So as long as you give the appropriate kind of heads up that you're going to be doing this and nobody responds and nobody comes and gets the person, then the funeral home can then dispose of them in this common place. What happens if a child dies in foster care in the middle of the adoption process? So that falls under their guardian because they have a guardian through the state or through the court, and that person is in charge of kind of what's going on. But it will possibly go back to the birth parents unless all of their rights have legally been taken away from them. So a lot of it goes back to the guardian and goes back to the judge. So distraught and tried to pick her up. Have you ever had this? So your friend drowned, and at the rosary, the mom became so distraught and tried to pick her up. Yeah, so we have what's called casket crawlers. And this is when somebody tries to get in the casket with the loved one, or they're trying to be with the loved one, because it happens. You see your loved one and you want to be next to them, you want to be near them, you want to hold them, you want to be close to them. It's just kind of instinctual because you've loved them and held them and cared for them so long that you want to be that close to them. But yeah, we do have casket crawlers. I had one lady and her son died. I think he was 19, and she has since died, but she wanted to see him and feel him. So we had the whole casket open because we have half couches here in Michigan, not full couch caskets. And I'd go in the room and peek, and she'd be in the casket with him, and I'd go in and pull her out, and then it was like a nonstop pull her out, put her in, pull her out, pull her in. Yeah, it was crazy. Yeah. Thank you, Albert. I try. Creepy casket crawlers, just do it before the service. Yeah, not during the service. Like, you have every opportunity to crawl in the casket beforehand. Try and hold back during the service. Have you ever had to embalm alone in the middle of the night? I have an experience with. Yes, I've been in the funeral home many times in the middle of the night. I kind of like it because in the middle of the night, I can go to the funeral home in like pajama pants and my sports bra with a sweatshirt or whatever I want to wear in the middle of the night. It's kind of nice. Nobody sees you. I don't have to worry about my hair or my makeup. I can wear a stocking cap. I can just go and do my thing and go back out. And I am not even in the least bothered by the fact that I'm there alone with a dead person. It's the question of who is lurking outside when I go out to my car. I am always afraid of the living, not of the dead. It's for sure never a question. What is a casket birth? A casket birth is when a pregnant woman is buried with the baby still in utero inside of her. And after the burial, down the road, as decomposition happens, the gas builds up and it presses out the baby vaginally, birth in the casket. So, spiritual medium Clayton Rogue, I'm a huge advocate for an at-home funeral similar to the way y'all did for your niece Kari. I think home funerals are great. I think taking things into your own hands are great. I'm definitely against cutting out the funeral home, obviously, because I'm a funeral director and work for a funeral home. Because I think there's an importance not in having to pay somebody, but in having a professional involved to help you. Whether it's an official funeral director through a funeral home or whether it's a funeral home that's designed to help with home funerals to make sure if you want the body not embalmed that you're handling the decomposition and the breakdown of the body as it's happening and walking you through those processes, or whether it's somebody that's assisting and just making sure you're understanding what's happening with a green burial or a home burial or whatever it may be, because there's so many facets there that most people are not, knowledgeable about. So it's just having a professional that's knowledgeable about the situations helping you through. So it's not that I am all about that you have to go to a funeral home and you need to spend this much money to have this embalming and this and this and this. It's that I think you need to have a professional just helping you with what it is you want to do, whatever it is, just making sure that your steps are covered. Ever have a family request a dentist come in and extract gold teeth? So the gold is not worth what it is that you would pay the dentist to come. Paying a professional to come to the funeral home to take out the gold teeth, these are just numbers I'm going to throw, but say they charge $800 to come on an off day to a funeral home to pull dead teeth out of a dead person for you to get like $200 worth of gold. It doesn't balance. So when I explain that to most people that doesn't balance, they're like, oh yeah, we're not going to do that. So unless you pull the gold teeth out yourself before your loved one comes into the care of the funeral home, it usually doesn't work out for you. Do you ever talk to the clients of the dead when you say, sorry, I have to do this because I was told it's okay to do that? I don't know what that means. I'm sorry if you're going to explain that question. Are you seeing a family where the loved one had a death plan done? Are you seeing a lot of people already have prearrangements nowadays? Yes, there's still just as many people. It's kind of going full cycle. It kind of lulled for a while that people weren't making advanced planning as much. But now I think it's coming back full circle that people are putting their money, prefunding and pre-planning because they want their wishes known and they want them in a common place. And especially with families that are dysfunctional and torn apart and not talking, now that you can in many states direct who is going to be in charge of your funeral. So I can go and say, I want, Barbara Jean to run my funeral and choose what's going to happen to me and not have my husband, because I don't think he's going to do what I want. And so I can go fill something out and have Barbara Jean take care of my funeral. And so people are, in this day and age where people aren't getting married, they're just living with partners, and that legally doesn't allow you to take care of their funerals. People are now getting the designation forms so that you can have whoever take care of you. What do you do with a ports or venous access device in a corpse for embalming? Nothing, just leave them. If it's an, IVs and stuff, we remove, but like ports when they're like up here, if that's the kind of port you're talking about, they're just left. We don't do anything with them. What do you do with the ports? So trusting that funeral with prepaid arrangements is huge, correct? I don't know what that question means, Eric. I'm sorry. if a family member wants to be present during the embalming of a body and help, is that possible? So legally, no. Unless you are an licensed embalmer, you're not allowed in the preparation room by law. However, the funeral home can have you sign a waiver and sign an OSHA form and sign a bloodborne pathogen form and sign these things to allow you to do that, especially for a family member to witness an embalming who has no concept of what an embalming is. They would have to sign off for like mental, anguish and all this stuff. So that is a huge thing. If you are an embalmer, so like when I went to Ohio to embalm my niece, they never even questioned, because I was a funeral director from Michigan. They allowed me to come in and work alongside an embalmer there and take care of my niece. But I'm not licensed in Ohio, so we had to have a licensed Ohio embalmer there while I was caring for her. But to have just a random person who has no concept of what's happening in the embalming room come in, it's a much broader question. And I don't think I've ever had anybody ask to do that, because people want to maybe dress them or paint their nails or do hair, things like that, which is totally fine. But to be present during the embalming when we're doing things that are considered very invasive and not warm and fuzzy, definitely a different aspect. Oh, okay, Eric. So you're asking about pre-funding and maybe the funeral home closes or misuses the funds. So a funeral home never holds the funds. It is never held by a funeral home. When you pre-fund with a funeral home, you're pre-funding to a third party. So either to a trust or to a life insurance. If you are writing a check to a funeral home, something is wrong. You should be writing the check to a third party. That money never goes to the funeral home. So it should be going to a trust or to such and such life insurance company or something. Because if a funeral home closes, your account should always be there, always intact. What you lose when that funeral home closes is the guarantee of that price lock-in with that funeral home. But you will always have that account, essentially, that you can take and go use that money at any funeral home. But you are losing the guarantee with that funeral home. So when a funeral home misuses the funds, they're being given to the funeral home. The funeral home is maybe keeping them, and they are not then sending them to the actual place that they're supposed to be putting them for investment. And so I think what happens a lot of those times is somebody does it once, and they're like, oh, I have a little money here. Maybe I'll do it a second time. And it's kind of like a slippery slope. And they realize, well, I have this money, and they don't think, crap, these people are going to die at some time. And so I have to then pay for their funeral out of pocket because I never invested the money. So it is a slippery slope, but it's one of those, the customers don't know what they don't know. And so they can easily be taken advantage of because of that situation, which sucks. Check went to funeral. Oh, that sucks, Eric. Okay. I watched a video of a Tibetan sky burial, and I wish I hadn't. Yeah, that's pretty graphic, Tibetan sky burials. That is rough. Very rough. Why do caskets cost so much? Well, they don't have to. Some do. It just depends what material they're made out of, what company they're from, how much a funeral home marks them up. We get the casket question often, but you can get caskets for the same price as Costco caskets from a funeral home. It depends on the funeral home and, what you're wanting. People think, I get the statement, oh, I'm going to just get a pine box. Pine is an expensive wood. Have you ever bought pine to make anything out of? It's expensive. So pine boxes are expensive to make. Just like if you're building a house, wood is expensive, or metal is expensive, or whatnot. It's a handcrafted item. There's a lot that goes into it. just like anything else that you purchase. How much is a couch? How much is a, any piece of furniture or things? Things are just expensive in life. Daniel Bowman, Daniel, my little friend. I think he's just the coolest guy. What is the hardest removal you have ever been on? Do funeral homes ever go to car accident scenes to remove a body? Great questions. The hardest removal. So aside from weight factor, which yes, moving a larger body is harder. I went to remove a gentleman or bring a gentleman into the care of the funeral home, and he was in his backyard. He had died of a heart attack in the backyard mowing. And we had probably 10 people there that were trying to help us. And they were not taking direction well. And we really just needed to get this guy on a sheet. And somebody else was trying to be helpful. And they kept saying, let's just pick him up by his belt. He was a larger man through his belly. So every time they kept picking him up by his belt, his pants were sliding off. So we kept pulling his pants down. I was like, you guys got to stop. So that was just kind of just getting the troops that were there kind of consolidated rough. Trying to think of hard, high floor, bringing people down a lot of stairs, or back bedrooms that are really small, narrow hallways you can't get the cots to, are rough. Trailers, small, as you said, not as you said, as I said, small, narrow hallways, back of the trailer, that's always rough. I think rough ones are always severe decomps, though. What was your other? Do we bring car accidents, ever go to the car accident scenes? So it depends on if the medical examiner has a team that goes, or if they contract funeral homes to go to the car accident scenes. So I will say when I have gone for doing a removal at a car accident scene on the highway, you kind of feel like, I don't know, it's a little power trip, because you're going around all the stopped traffic to get up to the scene to bring the person into your care and stuff. So you kind of feel like, I've always wanted a whirly light for those situations, that I could, be like a first responder kind of thing, even though we're last responders, they say, for funeral homes. Yeah. Can a body in a steel casket be cremated? Yes. Some crematories will cremate in a steel casket. It's a big mess, I think. So oftentimes what they'll do is take the steel casket and go recycle it, and they will move the body into a cardboard box for the cremation, with the family's knowledge that that's what's going to happen if they really want a steel casket. Oh, Mama Cass, reborns. Yeah, of course. I get emotionally exhausted or upset after a sad or upsetting service. And I'm trying to think the last time it happened. Sometimes it's just because the family's exhausting and they're just high, not demanding, but they just question after question and making sure all these little things are in place for them, and you're just exhausted afterwards because of that. And it may not always be just the emotion of everything. Any trend you wish would go away? That could be a loaded question, so I'm gonna skip that one for right now. I'll have to come back to that. How do you approach people that have been put in a barrel with cement? Like, seriously, how often does that happen? First of all, the body would be removed from the cement by the medical examiner or the forensic anthropologist that was taking care of it, and then you would get sent whatever was left over. So you would not be dealing with any cement. Yes, I'm drinking beer. Sorry, guys. I have a relative who was separated from his wife. He had terminal cancer. He made burial arrangements. Why was he able to arrange his own burial but not cremation? Told wife need to sign for cremation. So cremation, in most states, you cannot sign for yourself. because it is something that is, you can't authorize something for someone that is not there. So let's see a better way. So my husband is dead. I can authorize his cremation. If he's living, I can't authorize him to be cremated. I'm not going to send him to the crematory while he's alive. It has to be something that when he is dead is actually the paperwork is filled out for. You can't fill it out ahead of time that you want something to happen down the road. So his body has to be present and actually in body form, not a living human, to authorize for them. If that makes sense. David Cole, what is your favorite beer or mix to drink? So I like, this is Shorts Bel Air Brown. I like darker beers for the most part. Browns, ambers, porters. I like red wine, Malbec, some whites, maybe Riesling. Don't drink a ton, but sometimes, yeah, I do. Was there, placed him in a body bag, and one of the guys tripped as we were going down the stairs. Oh, I rode the deceased down the stairs, freaked. That would suck. I've always worried, knock on wood, about having, like, tripping downstairs or dropping a body or doing crazy things. It's scary. Hashtag DWAD, drinks with a director. I like it. Start it. Yes, the fluid goes down the public sewer and into the waterways and possibly drinking water. And what I have to say about that is, because people like to freak out, oh, the body fluids go down. Okay, you poop and pee and throw up, and your blood and everything that comes out of you already goes in the water system, just like the stuff from the funeral home does. And we are walking pharmacies nowadays. So at the water facility place, when I did the tour, in parts per trillion, nothing from a funeral home can be detected. Formaldehyde, none of it. But hormones and all the things that, all the medical stuff that we're putting in ourselves to keep ourselves alive and to keep ourselves going and to change our bodies and to change everything can be detected. So to me, like what we do at the funeral home, because when you look at the progression in the water and everything, what we are putting in our bodies voluntarily every day with chemicals and, you know, sodas and fast food and cleaners we use in our houses and pharmacy products that we take and things we do are harming us more than that could ever harm us. So that drives me nuts. But I'm going to do, I think, I'll try and save it to 2 last questions. Do you have any advice for someone considering a career in the death industry? What would love to hear an honest take, yes or no, love it, hate it, first steps? I have way too much advice. So I have on Facebook a pre-mortuary, mortuary student group for people that are right before they go to school or in school. It's called Funeral Directing 101. So if you're a student or interested in being a student, fill out the thing on Facebook, join the group, and you'll hear all of my advice. It's a free group. There's no like, oh, go to it and then all of a sudden you have to send me money. No, everything is free. So, yeah. Oh, your dad delivered bodies to Tri-State Crematory. That's, I swear, you know, like 15 years later or whatever it is, that is still going to haunt the industry for what they did. It is crazy. Love from Iceland. You know, I was just talking to somebody who was on their way to Iceland, and they go there all the time for long weekends because it's actually a really short flight over to there, and they go and they like bar hop and then they come home. They go on a Friday, bar hop, and then come home on a Sunday. It has nothing to do with the business, but I just had to share that. Oh, ever taken care of a medically frail child with a trach? I have actually a couple. One pops into my mind because I actually preached or spoke his whole funeral, and he died right before Christmas. He was a lovely, lovely child, lovely family, but he had a trach, and yes, I have taken care of several. So why do families leave before lowering the casket? Actually, not as many do as you would think. I lower the casket with more families there than actually leave when I'm doing it now. So it's more common that families are there. It's all about the comfort level of the funeral director and the vault company, and if they offer it to the family. And I offer families to be there when I'm tucking and the person in and closing the casket, and I offer for them to be there when I'm doing the vault, and I offer for them to be there during everything, because I want families to be a part of it, and I want them to see things. And I like pointing out, if you can see, their mom buried next to them and you can see the exposed vault, and I like to show the kids the vault down in the grave and the lid for the vault and kind of explain what's going on. So have you ever embalmed and then had a family request an autopsy? A couple times. I've done, not that the family's requested, but it's come back that the medical examiner has wanted an autopsy because maybe the person had a fall, or, came back that they needed to investigate something. Usually the family doesn't want an autopsy later. At least I haven't encountered that at all. Typically we know that beforehand. So have you ever embalmed and then had family? The box tops. Oh, you're so sweet. So we've gone and checked them one time, and I had like 8 envelopes, and so we had like 100 box tops. I video recorded my daughter and I going and getting them, and so we're gonna do it a couple more times and go check it and see. And I'll put together a little video so you guys can see. I don't really share my kids on stuff, but I'm gonna probably share her in there a little bit because she was so excited. Like, it was really awesome that people have sent things. Like, it's crazy. I love it. So sweet. I don't know, Matthew, what the maximum weight load a hearse can carry. I'll have to check on those statistics for you. I have no idea. What types of family disagreements have you had? Family not willing to make plans together, separate calling hours, sitting, silent fade. You just have the best questions. You really do. And you look in and I just have to tell you this, because every time you post, I always think quickly when I look at your profile picture that you look like Jeffrey Dean Morgan. Is that his name? From the Walking Dead show. Every time I'm like, ooh. So usually disagreements are over, kind of what they want to spend. Like, oh, I want a cheaper casket, or oh, I want this, or, I want this vault, or I want that vault. Usually, you don't encounter a ton of arguments, as many as you would think, probably. Cremation versus burial, once in a while, and usually it's over price, because they do want to save this huge chunk of money that they think is being saved. Not a ton over that. Yeah, I'm trying to think of the last arguments, and it was over, the estranged wife thought she had an insurance policy, which she ended up not having any. And so the family wanted burial, and she wanted cremation because that's what could be covered by the insurance policy. And the kids wanted a full everything, but they didn't want to give any money. So how long did you go to mortuary school for a diploma? So you do all your prereqs, and then you go for 1 full year to mortuary school, and then you do an apprenticeship, and you take state boards and national boards. So do questions to see how we're paying attention, like true or false water treatment. Well, we're going to send out a test. Your test will come in the mail to you. Merry Christmas to you too, Charlie Brown. Why are wood under the casket for? I still don't understand this question, Charlie. You've got to explain it to me more. Like, where is the wood under the casket? I don't know where that is that you're asking about. You love BBC. Like the BBC, like the British channel? I don't know what that's about. What about online classes? Damien, same length of time, but there are some schools, so like PIMS in Pittsburgh, theirs is a 2-year program because their online is based, that I just learned, so that you can work and go to school at the same time. So they will not let you do it in under 2 years. It's all a 2-year online program, which is really cool. Any surprising religious customs? Not surprising, because typically if I know I'm dealing with a different religion, I will like investigate the heck out of it before having to deal with the customs and such, so that I'm as respectful as I can be. I've been doing more Muslim services recently, which has been so fascinating. I'm like a kid in a candy store wanting to learn exactly why they're doing everything, and it's amazing. It's so fascinating, the whole routine ritual of what they're doing. So it's fun watching her read and trying to understand. Sorry, Eric. I'm sorry if this is dorky for me reading. Oh, yes. In some states, William, you can be a funeral director without being an embalmer. So like in Ohio, it's 2 different licenses, but many of them are the same. So like Michigan is 1 license. So you have a license to be a funeral director and an embalmer. You don't have to do both, though, within your field. You can find a funeral home that you work at where you only do one or the other if it's a larger and it's compartmentalized, as I was kind of saying. I have no idea what that person's talking about. All right, one last question, guys, and then I'm going to log off. You look so young to me to be an embalmer. Thank you. That's not a question, but I love you. Thank you. Ooh, L. Porter, that is a good question. If you could have done any funeral celebrity, who? That's a big, bold end question. I'm going to have to think about that one. It would have to be probably a presidential or like a Princess Diana type big one, just to have experienced the grandness of it and the moment and all the participants, and I think just the revelry of it would be quite amazing to partake in, because all of it is not on your shoulders. There's too many people that are choreographing and doing all of it, so all the pressure is not on you like it would be with a medium-sized funeral and like your town and such. So I think, yes, I talked about Bush's funeral at the beginning, guys, so you'll have to go back and check that out. Yeah, like Princess Diana, I think would be a big one to do. Michael Jackson, no way, not even a little bit. Reagan would have been great, yes. So some more of those kind of ones, I think, for sure. Can a body move from cadaveric spasms? Yes, but not far after death. So none of this like moving after like 10-hour thing. No, sorry. So, all right, I'm going to cut myself off, even though, okay, one last. How many family members personally thank you after service you did for them? I would say 99%. Even if I just show up and work a little time, I'm usually hugging somebody. That's just, I guess, how I am, that I'm, in there with it. So people are usually very thankful and kind and say nice things. So it's a good experience for the most part with most families. So thank you guys so much for joining me. This is always so fun. I kind of love the fireside chat. I may have to do this a couple times while we're still in this. We're in a rental house while we're building a house. So this is kind of cozy. I kind of love it. So we might have to do this more. Coming up in January, just to give you guys a little heads up, I'm going to be making a whole bunch of connections. I have some fun things I want to try and get going. I'm going to be doing some more, hopefully, mortuary school visits. Going to try and do my restoration video with my little resin head from China that I have here. organ and tissue donation video, which I need to get edited and get the final things on. Vault company, how they put the vault in. Medical school donation. Little Miss funeral collaborations, a few more collaborations. And then so there's a brewery near me that used to be a funeral home. Gonna try and go there and visit. And there's another brewery that does a line of funeral home or like funeral themed beers. I just kind of think that's fun. So that may pop up on the channel here too soon as this random brewery funeral home tie-in. So looking for some fun places and things to do just to have some levity to the channel as well. So if you guys have ideas for videos, post them below, and I will talk to you guys soon. Have a good Christmas if I don't chat with you too much before then. So bye guys. Thanks so much.